All right, and welcome back to First Team Fantasy. Today we are going to go over a preview of the Thursday night game as well as a start sit segment. So we're going to kick it off. The Bucks are heading into Buffalo to take on the Bills. Over under in this one is 42, and the Bills are favored by 8.5. Granted, we have seen some disappointments out of the Bills this year. They just lost to the Patriots. They lost to the Jets in the first week of the season, and they also lost to the Jags in London. So we'll see how this one goes. The Bucks do have a good defense. The Bills are currently scoring 28.3 points per game. So we'll see. The Bills defense is giving up 16.9, 201 pass yards, and 128 rush yards per game. So I'm not too sure how I like starting the Bucks defense, just given, the Bills are high-powered offense. The Bucks are giving up, the Bucks defense that was the Bills defense. The Bills defense is giving up 201 pass yards, 128 rush yards per game. And the Bucks defense is giving up 246 pass yards, 95.8 rush yards per game.
Yeah.
So they're giving up a lot through the air. They're in like the bottom third of the league in pass defense. I think Josh Allen's going to be airing it out. So like I said, I don't like starting the Bucks defense. But seeing what the Bills are giving up on the ground, 128.3 per game. I like the Rachaad White start. He hasn't been very efficient running the ball, but he has been getting the volume out of that backfield. So he might have, people have had success running the ball against the Bills. We saw Zeke get into the end zone. Rachaad White is due for a touchdown. One thing we also saw last week out of the Patriots offense was Ramondre Stevenson got 6 catches out of the backfield for, I believe it was 51 yards, yes. And we also saw Rachaad White get 6 catches out of the backfield last week, something I think he can replicate this week. I think he's a good start, honestly. And with the running back, outlook, it's one that you probably don't have a decision anyways. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin should be decent in this game. We saw the Bills defense give up a pretty, Demario Douglas and Kendrick Bourne both had pretty good fantasy days. So I think that Baker Mayfield can replicate that with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I think they're both good starts. And if it's a tough day, it's a tough day, but I don't think they should have any problems getting you at least to 10 at the very least.
Yeah.
Especially considering the targets that they get. Cade Otton is an interesting one because last week the Bills gave up 6 receptions, 83 yards, and a touchdown to the Patriots tight end room as a whole, which they use a bunch of tight ends. The difference between them and Tampa Bay is Cade Otton is on the field over 90% of the time in every game. He was on the field 96% of the time in the last game. I think he's a good start. If you need a tight end, I mean, just seeing what they gave up a touchdown to Mike Gesicki, and Pharaoh Brown was having some production. It was all over the place. Like I said, it was multiple tight ends, but just given the fact that Cade Otton is the only one out there, the targets in Tampa Bay are limited to like Rachaad White, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Cade Otton, and then there's like Trey Palmer in there sometimes, and it's so there's not too much going on there. That's why I think Cade Otton might be a decent start. Baker, not really. I just don't. Like we talked about, this is a week where there are no buys, so you should have your quarterback that you drafted. If they are healthy, there's no need to play a quarterback like Baker Mayfield this week. He's the current quarterback 19. He did have 275 yards last week against an Atlanta defense that only gives up 190 on average through the air. So, I mean, if you do happen to need a quarterback, like if yours got hurt, you had Deshaun Watson, something of that sort. But like we said, if there's guys like Dak Prescott out there, I definitely prefer him this week. And that's really all. I mean, if you want to start the kicker, McLaughlin, we've seen Tampa Bay struggle often in the red zone. So I really don't hate that at all. And that's really all I have for the Bucs side of the ball.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the Rashad White start. Um, it's kind of weird because, yeah, we're seeing teams have success running the ball on the Bills, but then the Bucs do not run the ball efficiently at all. So it's like we'll see how that goes. But either way, he has that receiving upside, so he's a safe start no matter what. Yeah, obviously Mike and Chris Godwin, the K Dot, and yeah, when we covered
And
that
Tyler
Patriots.
Algier got a good, like, he had a good receiving day out of the backfield last week against the Bucs,
Yeah, yeah.
which you don't see often out of Tyler Algier. So that gives me confidence in James Cook.
Yeah, yeah. And, yeah, on the Bills side of the ball, obviously you're starting Josh Allen no matter what. James Cook, I mean, you have to start him. He's gotten at least 12 carries in every single game except the one against the Jaguars. He's coming off a 19-point week where he had those 3 catches, 46 yards. He's only scored 2 touchdowns on the season, 1 rushing, 1 receiving, and we've seen their willingness to put in Latavius Murray at the goal line. Again, that's just going to be something that happens. James Cook's going to get, 50 to 60% of snaps. It's just what he does with those snaps. Obviously, I mean, I like starting him this week, but again, with the injuries and everything like that, you kind of are forced to. It's just one of those things. Stephon Diggs, you're obviously starting. Gabe Davis, oh, I just don't know because as we talked about the 3 games he hasn't caught a touchdown. He scored 5 points, 3 points, and 1 point. It boils down to now with Dawson Knox out, obviously Kincaid takes a step forward, but that's one less threat on the field for Josh Allen to look for. We've seen Gabe Davis kind of fizzle out a little bit. Depending who your receiver room is, he's really going to be touchdown or bust. Like I have him on my roster, I probably will not be starting him just because I think there's more reliable targets out there that are going to get consistent 4 or 5 catches, and they won't completely burn you. Is there a strong possibility Gabe Davis gets in the end zone? Absolutely. I mean, he's a red zone target. But again, that's a risk you take when you start Gabe Davis is he going to get in the end zone?
Yeah.
And lastly, Kincaid. I love Dalton Kincaid this week. It's just with Knox being gone, he has no competition. I mean, Quentin Morris is ruled out for this game. The only other tight end they have active is Joel Wilson, another rookie who has not played a single snap all season. So it's going to be Kincaid out there, probably 85-90% of the snaps, to be honest with you. Uh,
Yeah.
After we just saw him get 8 receptions on 8 targets, 75 yards, I think it's going to be a big week for him. For tight ends, if you can get 10 points out of a tight end, it's a solid week. He's only projected 7.7. I think he'll beat that projection. I feel safe with the Kincaid start. Someone to move on from is Tyler Bass, if you're still holding on to Tyler Bass. I mean, in his past 3 games, he has 6 fantasy points total against the Jaguars, Giants, and Patriots. He's missed 3 field goals in the past 2 weeks. It's just, we look at the offense, they're super high powered. We look at the name, and we're like, oh, Tyler Bass has been solid. There's just better options out there. And I mean, the Bucs defense isn't terrible by any means. I'm not completely confident in Tyler Bass. So I'm looking to move elsewhere for this week. And then the Bills defense, just to cover them quickly, because they are a viable fantasy defense. They're still the number 2 number 2 fantasy defense so far in the season. But again, they got 3 fantasy points against the Patriots, and they only got 7 against the Giants, where they gave up 9 points. They had 3 sacks and nothing else. They're a tough play. I'm leaving them in my lineup, and they've been kind of ugly of late, but can they force turnovers? Yes, they've proven it. Is Baker known to make some dumb decisions? Yes. So can they possibly get something there? Yeah. It's just tough because there may be better options out there on the waiver wire, especially with there being no buys, means teams that have these top defenses are probably going to be starting them. So if you feel more comfortable kind of streaming a defense for the week, I wouldn't blame you for it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's been tough because their defense has played very hit or miss on the season, and they're kind of riddled with injuries. But that's all I had for the Bills. If you had anything else, or if you wanted to take it into the start sits.
No. Yeah, we can go right into the starts and sits and start it off with my quarterbacks. My start of the week is Dak Prescott against the Rams. We're seeing Dak come off of his best game against the Chargers in week 6. And we just saw this Rams team give up 230 yards in the air to Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
I believe Dak is a better quarterback and has just as good, if not better, weapons around him than the Steelers do. I think it should be a great day for Dak. And then on my other side for my sits, it's hard to say this when he is on a heater for the most part in MVP talks, but I have Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah.
His second lowest game, like when they played the Patriots in week 3, he had 13 points. And we just saw him get shut down by the Eagles. And I think in this one, they'll have a lot more success running the ball, but I think that this might be one where Raheem Mostert gets a couple touchdowns, and which Tua could still have a good day passing by all means, but I just think this one might get vultured by the running backs because we saw Raheem Mostert have success against them last time. Whether or not they sell out trying to stop Tyreek Hill again, I don't know, but knowing Bill Belichick, he tends to do the same things when he plays different or the same teams. So I believe they will be doing their best to try to limit the pass game and give up whatever they give up in the run.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then whoever you have for quarterbacks.
It's funny because, we obviously talk about who our start sits are going to be, so we don't have the same guys. So Schiff had told me that Dak was going to be his start, and I'd still put Dak as my start and started writing on it, and then had to change it. So my start of the week is going to be Jared Goff against the Raiders. As a Raider fan, we've been solid against the pass, and the Bears lit us up, and the Lions just got destroyed by the Ravens. They're going to be looking to come back out with vengeance. I'm very confident in Jared Goff's ability to pass the ball. Our linebackers were already mediocre, Divine Diablo being the best one. He might not even play in this game. If he does not, you're going to see a lot of Sam Laporta. Amon-Ra is going to get his no matter what. And then another piece that played into this was Montgomery's still questionable. Even if Montgomery does play, I don't think it's a game where they're going to have to crazy workload him. Knowing Dan Campbell, if Montgomery does play, he'll do that anyways. But he's going to have success passing out of the back or passing to the backfield. Jahmyr Gibbs, Montgomery. It's a favorable matchup at home against the Raiders, who just do not look like they're playing very good football right now. And then my sit of the week is going to be Matt Stafford in Dallas. And reason I put this one is he's been very consistent. He hasn't been top 10 starting quarterback, and if you're playing a 10-man, that means he's not making the cut. There's no quarterbacks on bye this week. He's averaging about 15 points a game. I assumed when Cooper Kupp came back, maybe the touchdowns would start flooding in, maybe those fantasy points would go up, and they haven't. It's still been the same Matt Stafford. And if anything, Tutu Atwell has caught 2 touchdowns in the 3 weeks Cooper Kupp's been back. It's just, and he's only caught a couple catches. I think in both games he got the touchdown. That was his only catch. It's weird that the Rams haven't really moved their offense crazy forward. It could be losing Kyron Williams. Darrell Henderson looks serviceable. Will he have much success against Dallas? I don't think so. I think they're going to have to rely on the pass more, and I don't know if they're going to have too much success like how it's been. I think Stafford's safe to give you 13 to 15 points, but if I'm talking top 10 quarterback I'm starting, he's not in that conversation this week.
Yeah, I'd agree. And then moving on to the running backs, I have for my start of the week, Ramondre Stevenson. We saw it was week 2 when they first played, not week 3. In week 2, when they first played, Ramondre scored 15 points. We're seeing him start to get more targets out of the backfield. And I mean, I think he's a vital part of this offense for this offense to go. So I really like him this week. I think, he's at least due for a double-digit fantasy day.
Yeah.
And for my sit of the week, I have Derrick Henry against the Falcons. Derrick Henry is currently in a lot of trade talks. Not that has a lot to do with anything, but you'd think if they're going to trade a guy, they're not going to give him a super heavy workload right before they do that, because if he were to get injured, that then ruins any chances of trade. And, he's only been getting at the most since week 1 or week 2, 60% of. And that's not even saying Tyjae Spears is getting 40, on the field less. They're on the field together a lot of the times. You can see what direction this Tennessee backfield is heading towards. This whole team in general. Ryan Tannehill's out right now. They're starting
Will
Levis.
Yeah.
They just traded Kevin Byard, talking about trading D-Hop, trading Derrick Henry. So it's going to more likely than not be Tyjae Spears' backfield by the end. I just don't see Derrick Henry. And the Falcons' run defense has only been giving up about 95 yards per game and only 19 points per game in general. I don't think there will be very many scoring opportunities with a first-time starting quarterback. I don't see much success for this offense as a whole this week, but Derrick Henry's probably not going to have, unless he breaks one of his famous big runs. But just going into the trade deadline is in like a week now, less than a week. It's the 31st. So I don't really see them giving him a whole bunch of work in a week that they are trying to move him. Yeah. And that's what I got.
No, I'd 100% agree. It's kind of sad because with all these big name running backs like the Zekes, the Leonard Fournettes, I don't wish it upon Derrick Henry, but I feel like this season for Derrick Henry is what last season was for Leonard Fournette, for Zeke. He just seems like he's reaching the end of the line.
I think it does really depend on, like, for example, if he were to go to the Ravens, obviously that would be a good fit for him. It's a place where Gus Edwards, his entire career, has gotten at least 5 yards per carry. It's very clear he would eat there. If he were to go there and, produce, help the Ravens get to like AFC Championship or something like that, that would greatly affect his relevance next year and what. But so it really does depend, because he's going to have to go to a contending team, and what he adds to that team is going to determine his value for however long he continues to play.
Yeah.
And I think that was the thing with Lenny. He got outplayed by Rachaad White last year.
Zeke outplayed by Pollard.
Got outplayed by Pollard, but Zeke still does have a job, and he's still, he scored a touchdown this past week.
Yeah, but just from what we've seen, and it's kind of, when we were really high on Tyjae Spears, and I'm not saying Derrick Henry's been outplayed by him, but it's been very close.
It's just been, and it's to the point where that's their future, and they're not, and it's a money thing, whatever. But even, like Kareem Hunt, we see Kareem Hunt come back. He's already hurt.
Yeah. It's just how it goes. Yeah.
It's how it goes, man.
Yeah. Okay. To get, my start of the week at running back, I'm going to keep it on the Lions. If David Montgomery goes, he's an absolute must start. The Raiders are horrendous against the run. We've seen him make A.J. Dillon look good. We saw Mondre have a good week against him. We saw Deontay Foreman turn into just prime Marshawn Lynch against the Raiders. It's just David Montgomery's going to absolutely feast. Even if
And I think it's fair enough to say, yeah, if he doesn't play Jahmyr Gibbs.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, if he does not play Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously. And depending how your team looks with injuries and things like that, even if Montgomery does play, I don't hate Jahmyr Gibbs. We have seen that the Lions will randomly phase him out completely, so that's a more risky play. But if Montgomery's out, yeah, absolutely Jahmyr Gibbs, fire him up. And the sit of the week is going to be Ken Walker against Cleveland. The Cleveland run defense is deadly. Ken Walker is very good at what he does. It's just DK. One thing, and this relies heavily, DK Metcalf is questionable again with the hip injury. Even if DK goes, I still don't like the matchup that well. We've talked about how Geno has not looked that great. Again, he's been a career backup, had a very solid season last season. He's doing okay this season. By no means is he terrible, but he just hasn't looked as good. If DK's out and you have even less targets, we've seen, the Browns shut down the pass. Do I think Geno will have crazy success passing? No. And then you look at their D-line, and they're solid too. It's just, I can see it being a very rough week
for the Seahawks in general.
Sit? Ken Walker.
Okay, I thought you were saying DK. You're good.
No, yeah. Ken Walker's the sit. I'm saying if DK misses and does not play in this game, they can emphasize even more on the run. But yeah, the Browns defense has just been dominant. He's one of those, you're probably starting him, but I don't know. I don't see a good week from Ken Walker coming in this one.
We did see Jonathan Taylor have a good week, but at the same time, they were able to spread the ball around.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how it goes. This was the Browns defense that gave up 38 points to the Colts last week.
But that, fair. I just see that as more of an anomaly. You know what I mean? They also held the Niners to nothing.
That's true. And it all really depends on whether or not, if the Seahawks defense can force turnovers.
Yeah.
With PJ Walker in there.
Yeah.
Obviously, the offense is going to be on the field a lot more, giving them more scoring opportunities, making the Browns defense a lot more tired. Similar to what happened in the Ravens game, where the Browns defense was just on the field all the time. So, you're going to tire out. You're going to give up big plays. So if the Seahawks can do that, that is kind of the recipe to beat the Browns right now. And yeah, we're going to have to see. But from that, right now, looking at it, if the Browns are able, if Myles Garrett is able to do what Myles Garrett does, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Moving into the wide receivers, my start of the week is Drake London taking on Tennessee. They are going, we already know, we talked about Tennessee. They just lost Kevin Byard. It's going to be very tough for them. They've already had a hard time defending the pass. They are currently 17th against fantasy wide receivers, and they just lost their best safety. Zay Flowers in week 6, Tennessee's last game, was the wide receiver 1 for the Ravens, scored 17.1 points. We haven't seen Drake London get less than 6 targets in a game since week 1, which, we know he's the top target. The Titans struggle against the run, or they struggle against the pass. They're solid against the run, meaning they're going to have to air the ball out more. We've seen Desmond Ridder pass for 300 yards in multiple games. I think this will be a great game for Drake London.
Yeah.
My sit is Hollywood Brown. We've seen 2 weeks in a row of 7.5, 7.4 points.
Mm-hmm.
He is going up against a very tough Ravens defense. It could get to the point with the last game where they're down by a lot and end up having to pass, so he gets a lot of catches near the end of the game. But Jared Goff is a lot more proficient of a quarterback than Josh Dobbs is, so I wouldn't necessarily count on those targets being the same at all. He's going to be under a lot of pressure. We just don't know how this game is going to go for the Arizona Cardinals offense. And just seeing the performance of Hollywood, even with, double-digit targets, still could not get above 10 points. So that is concerning. Yeah, if you have another wide receiver that you can start this week, I'd prefer to go in that direction. And that's all I got for the receivers.
No, I 100% agree with the Hollywood. I just think that Cardinals offense as a whole is going to struggle so heavily that it's just going to be rough going for them as a whole. My start of the week at receiver is going to be Scary Terry against the Eagles. I know we talked about it previously when they played the Eagles. He always plays good against them. He had 22.6 fantasy points their first time they played him. The Commanders have looked a little shaky on offense as of recent, but we saw how much success they had against the Eagles. I see, even if the Commanders struggle again, I see Scary Terry having a solid game. He's just, it's one of those where this is going to be a game where you look at it and you're like, okay, like the difference between him and the number 2 weapon in Washington is going to be clear to see in this one. My sit of the week is going to be Nico Collins going to Carolina. Now, the Panthers are solid against the pass. They are 11th against receivers in fantasy, so they're towards the upper end of the pack. Nico Collins in the past 2 games has only seen 10 targets. In last game, Tank Dell didn't even play, and he will be returning this week. I mean, it's just one of those where Carolina's rush defense is so bad. I expect Devin Singletary, Dameon Pierce to have some success. I just don't know if Nico Collins is going to. And I'm excited to see it because we're finally going to get to see, the top quarterbacks being drafted go head to head. CJ Stroud's look better than Bryce Young. We'll see. But it's just one of those matchups I look at. And, I mean, you're probably going to have to start Nico Collins, but I just see him struggling this week. I see a single-digit week from Nico Collins.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It's possible. Going into our tight ends and finishing it off, my start of the week is Dalton Schultz taking on Carolina. Although they have been good against the wide receivers, they have, in the recent weeks, in week 3, they gave up 8.1 points to Noah Fant. Yep. And in week 5, they gave up 19.7 to Sam Laporta.
Yeah.
Dalton Schultz has clearly become a cog in this offense, and they plan on using him in the last 3 games. He got 13.2, 19.5, and 16.1 fantasy points. I think he's due for another double-digit day, and you should, if you don't have him picked up, if he's available on your waiver wire, or if he cleared waivers, go get him. He's a guy that you could probably start for the rest of the year. My sits, there are 2 of them because they happen to play on the same team, and that would be Jonnu Smith and Kyle Pitts. Just after the last game, we're seeing them split way too much work. We saw Jonnu have early involvement and disappear. We saw Kyle Pitts have involvement late in the game, and that was it. There's too much in between. There's no consistency. It's just hard for me to say that I feel confident starting either one of these guys on any given week at the point where they're splitting. You don't like when tight ends are splitting reps because you see things like we did in the last game. They're not going to have consistent involvement. Drake London is going to continue to be the top target. And if you can't even count on one of the guys being Desmond Ritter's number 2, I don't know how confident I am in that, especially when there's guys like if you can go out and get Kincaid, if you can get Dalton Schultz, there's just better options out there. And yeah, that'll do it for me.
Yeah, and I'm going to go spicy. This isn't someone I don't know about season long, but it's Taysom Hill. They're playing the Colts. The Colts give up 13 fantasy points to the tight end, which is very generous in the tight end landscape. The first weeks, they played some tough defenses. The past 2, when they played the Texans, they played the Jaguars, 12.2, 16.8, 8 targets, 5 targets. We see them running the ball. They play the Colts, they play the Bears, they play the Vikings. He's someone that I mean, it's obviously a higher risk play, but the reward, if it pans out, and I think it will this week, you could see another, 13 to 15 point fantasy week for Taysom Hill. It's obviously, again, a higher risk, but he also went up from 12% rostered to 40% rostered this past week. So I guess people are starting to believe in his hype going forward for the rest of the season. The sit is going to be Trey McBride. I know they just lost Zach Ertz, the IR. He's going to get a larger workload. He's going to be out there more often. But against this Baltimore defense, who gives up 6.9 fantasy points to tight ends, that is just ugly, especially in a week, again, with no buys. By no means am I starting Trey McBride. I'm not even thinking about it. I think the Cardinals are going to struggle heavily. They could possibly put up 10, 13 points in this game. How much of that will go to Trey McBride? It's just a matchup I'm avoiding completely. And I know the hype behind him is there. We'll see going forward after this week, but at least this week, no. Completely against it.
No, yeah. And with that, that'll about do it.
Mm-hmm.
We will be back on Friday with the injury update as well as the previews of the rest of the games. Look forward to our head-to-heads for the rest of the week. And as we say, thank you for all of the support. Any comments, questions you may have, we're here for you at any time. And like we say every time, come back, take more reps with the first team.
Sir.